Welcome on in, everybody. Recapping last night's action as we had Terence "Bud" Crawford retain his WBO welterweight title with a 10th round TKO victory over Showtime Shawn Porter. Corner stopping it. His father, Kenny Porter, stopping it, waving it as the referee was asking if he wanted to continue. Shawn said that he did. He had taken 2 vicious knockdowns from Terence Crawford, who really looked like he was was just building up the intensity as the fight was going. But listen, it wasn't easy. I mean, Shawn Porter did what I think he does in every one of these fights, which is just put up such a valiant effort. He makes it a tough night of the office for everybody that he goes in there with. Every time it looked like that Terence Crawford was getting a little bit comfortable, was starting to get the jab loose, Shawn Porter would get himself right into Terence Crawford's kitchen, and it was a tough back and forth between them. Each one of these guys got headbutt, each one of these guys got cut, so it was definitely earned the hard way for Terence Crawford. There's no doubt about that. But man, he's a sicko. He's a sicko in there. It felt like every time that things got a little bit tough, or that Shawn Porter, got any piece on him, he just smiled. He went forward. He was trying to outstrength him in wrestling. Anytime that it got with those dirty tactics, like, he just never felt phased. And sometimes when you see those things in a boxing match, it seems like gamesmanship. It's trying to show your opponent that, oh, you got me, but I'm really, I'm trying to show that I'm not bothered. I didn't get that vibe from Bud. Like, I felt like watching Terence Crawford, like, he legitimately was enjoying, I think, a hard fight. I think he was enjoying the competition. I think he was enjoying Shawn Porter bringing a little bit something to him. And I think he was enjoying figuring it out until he could put him on the canvas. I thought that, he was looking for that check hook all night. He was really trying to goad him into things. His hands look fast. The type of range that he has with those arms, even not being the tallest guy in the world, he can still get to you from such vicious angles and such a great distance. And Shawn just has to lunge in there to put himself in such harm's way to get anything on Terence Crawford. So shout out to Bud. He got it done. He got everybody who said this is going to be the big showcase for him at welterweight. This is going to be the fight that will solidify him, that he's not just some product of publicity or whatever you want to say. And anybody who thought that, you're silly, because this guy just shows you Terence Crawford is a chameleon in there. He can win so many different ways. He can adjust on the things on the fly. He can be patient with a game plan, and is really looking to dish out just serious punishment every single time he steps in that ring. This is not a case of how can I outsmart you, how can I outpoint you. It's really a case of how can I go in there and how can I destroy you, but also just take as little damage as possible as well. Tremendous performance from him. I think he solidified himself as the top welterweight tonight. If you didn't believe it, it's tough not to accept that right now. Errol Spence was in the building. He walked out. That was a tough look for Errol Spence, man. That's a tough look for Errol Spence to be there and to be in the crowd and the cameras catch you. Leaving as soon as the fight's over. You got to stick around for that. Antonio Tarver said it best, my guy, the Magic Man, where he said that you can't be in that position and just walk out. Like, you got to be there and start selling the fight. And it's become a thing in boxing where it's like none of these guys want to feel like they want to show that they want the fight, because it shows either a sign of desperation or a sign of frustration or any of this stuff. I loved everything that Terence Crawford did. 2 things tonight. Not only did he win the fight, but he won the post-fight, and saying these things like, who looks like the number 1 in the division now? Crowd goes crazy for him. Maybe I'll go up to 154 and he could take his tail out of his butt and we could do it there. Basically saying, you guys know who I want. I want Errol Spence next, bar none. Mince no words about it. It was absolutely fantastic by Terence Crawford in every which way. It's enough. It's enough already. The fight has to happen. We've kicked around this enough. We've done enough waiting around. We've danced around this enough. And now it's time to happen. There's no excuse for it. Errol Spence, whatever things he was chasing, Manny Pacquiao, he was chasing Canelo Alvarez. All that stuff is out the window. Manny Pacquiao's president and Canelo's a cruiserweight. You got one thing, you got one responsibility right now to the fight fans, Errol Spence, and that is to go defend your welterweight titles against the other best welterweight on the planet. And we go and get this fight on, man. This fight's going to make a ton of dough. I think these guys will be tremendous. I think with the money, with the machine behind them, they'll make huge dough for this, and it creates their own legacy. It creates their own stars. I like it more so than the idea of either one of these guys going and fighting a Manny Pacquiao or, Errol Spence fighting a Canelo Alvarez, which, looked like it would end badly for him. And look, for Shawn Porter, like this was, I thought he looked, good too. I thought that he put up a good test. Man, his dad put up a rough post game. Dads are brutally honest. They tell people what you don't want them to hear. I don't know. I'm not going to criticize anybody's parenting, but I just think that because he's also a coach, he's not just his parent, but son just got put on his ass twice. You stop the fight and you're doing it as some kind of a lesson. Kind of weird. He was down on all the scorecards, but only by a round, probably about to be 2. And then one was pretty lopsided, but 2 of those cards were within reach. He caught Terence Crawford with a pretty nice right hand. Maybe he could have gotten him with something. So I don't necessarily think it was a bad stoppage by the father, but I would have held that stuff either in the holster or I would have saved it for like the post-fight press conference to blast my son's preparation I don't know. I honestly think that, in my opinion, Shawn Porter could have the best preparation. He could be a couple years younger. You could put all the circumstances you want into it. And I think Terence Crawford is going to have that performance probably 99 times out of 100, And it was, I just thought watching the fight the entire time, as much as I respect that rough and tumble approach from Shawn Porter, and man, he was even picking his spots a little bit better tonight. I just felt that everything that Terence was hitting him with was just a little bit more vicious. It seemed to just have a little bit more snap to it because he's catching it at the end of shots rather than rushing in and trying to make things happen. So there was very little risk in anything that Terence Crawford was going to have to eat back with things that he was throwing, where you saw Shawn, it was going to eventually catch up to him. It was eventually going to be some serious bad news for him. I love that this performance, though, happens for Terence Crawford because you do have that common opponent. You do have Shawn, and I do believe this. Like, I hope that I do think finishing in one is necessary. If he would have just wanted a decision, especially a close one, you could go back and say, well, Shawn, Errol Spence did the same thing, but I really thought it was on Bud to really deliver. And he said this in the lead up too. Everything's on the line for him. There's nothing really on the line for me. Everything was on the line for Shawn Porter, and there was nothing really on the line for Terence Crawford. And so he needed to not only have that exclamation point ending to this fight and get it the way that it did end, but also demand what people have been craving to see in fighting Errol Spence Jr. And all check. Both of those are there. And I think in a lot of people's minds, re-solidifying maybe in the number 1 pound for pound rankings. Some people will still have Canelo number 1. I don't have a huge grievance if you have Canelo number 1 because of the kind of run that he's been on. But Terence is right there. And if he beats Errol Spence, I think that would probably solidify him as number 1. And I just think that the thing that makes him special, Canelo's done some great things in moving up, and he's obviously really shown himself to grow as the weight classes grow. He feels like he's getting better. The intentions are getting worse in there. He's got that violent streak in him too. That's been fun to watch. But Terence Crawford just has so many bags in his trick, so many tricks in his bag when he goes into that ring. It's really like you're almost watching a guy who's just got different moves on the court, has just different pitches if he was on the mound. his different speeds if he was a quarterback. Like, he's just got such an arsenal in there, from switching stances to the boxing finesse, to the defense, how good it is, to how he can crank up the power, how he can crank up the intensity, the versatility that he's got. He just feels like he's just got every tool of the trade in there with him. So purely from a boxing perspective, I'd give Canelo the edge just because I think his resume is a little bit better and the names are a little bit brighter. But if you're just talking from a skills position, pound for pound, I don't think anybody touches this guy. I think he's the best out there. I really, really do. And it's no disrespect on Canelo. I just think watching him, I just marvel at all of the things this guy can do, all the things that he seems like he's perfected, all of the strengths that he has. He's just so damn good, man. He's so damn good, and it just feels so pedestrian even coming up with something like that as a description, because he just floors me. He floors me. So great performance from Terence Crawford. Great call out of Errol Spence. Fight has to happen. We'll see what ends up coming from this fallout of Top Rank being over, all that type of stuff. But I hope that it ends with whatever sides of the track this ends on. It ends with Terence Crawford with a big payday, taking on Errol Spence, and really, I think, solidifying all the respect. I just thought, all around, just Terence was fantastic night. I mean, I definitely felt like the commentators were leaning heavily towards Shawn Porter on the broadcast. I think they were giving him a lot of credit. I don't know if that's because Shawn is a peer. He's also a commentator. Everybody loves Shawn Porter, and you love that underdog mentality from him. I thought it was close, but I didn't think that Shawn's close was like, I thought it was close enough to stay in the fight. I didn't really feel like it was close enough to win the fight, if that makes any sense. Like, I thought that he put up a respectable performance. He certainly wasn't getting blown out by Terence Crawford, but I didn't really feel like, I felt like every time that he hit it, even Terence with anything good, I thought Terence just liked it and wanted to keep coming back with something better. So it's a credit to him that he was able to get some shots and certainly make Terence Crawford work for it. You want that. You want a dog fight. You want Terence Crawford to have to go earn it. But I don't think that it was one of these things where, I didn't think Shawn was winning the fight. And even some of those middle rounds, they were calling them swing rounds. I guess in my eyes, we're swinging towards Terence Crawford. That's just how it was rolling for me. But Shawn Porter's a dog, man. He goes out there and he tries to make these things tough. He certainly made it a lot tougher on Errol Spence, which is going to be that common thread. He said after the fight, that's the man. Of everybody that I fought, that's the guy right there. He maybe thinks that he had an argument against Errol Spence. I still think Errol Spence won that fight, but, there's no argument to be had with this one. No argument to be had with this one. And, hopefully him and his dad make up after this one, because I imagine, like, he's going to be like, hey, Dad, why don't you calm down with that commentary afterwards? So, great performance by Bud. Awesome fight night. And, man, make him versus Errol Spence. Don't screw this up.